Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. There is no force more quietly transformative than leadership. Not the kind barked from podiums or written into job titles, but the kind that rewires human hearts without a word of offense. The kind that turns resistance into cooperation, not by domination, but by deep, magnetic understanding. The kind of leadership that alters destinies, not through control, but through influence rooted in respect. You don't have to shout to be powerful. You don't have to demand to be heard. In fact, those who shout the loudest often have the least to say. Real leadership lives in restraint. It moves through stillness. It creates momentum not by pushing others, but by drawing something greater out of them. This is the power behind every legendary figure who reshaped humanity, not through tyranny, but through truth. Abraham Lincoln, in the darkest hours of a divided nation, was told time and again to punish the South with fury, but he replied, "Do I not destroy my enemies when I make them my friends?" That's not weakness. That's leadership at its highest voltage, to turn the bitter into the better, to transmute resentment into rapport. That is the art of leadership that changes people without making them defensive, without sparking shame, without crushing their spirit. And you, yes you, carry this same capacity. But first you must silence your own ego. You must walk into every interaction not with a thirst to prove yourself, but with a hunger to understand others. You must care more about connection than control, more about impact than ego, more about legacy than likes. Because here's the eternal truth. People don't change when they're criticized. They don't shift when they feel shamed. They resist when their identity is threatened. But they awaken when they feel seen. They transform when they feel safe. They rise when someone believes in them louder than they believe in their own excuses. And that someone can be you. But it begins with your mindset, not theirs, yours. If you walk through life thinking people are stubborn, lazy, or stupid, they will prove you right. Not because they are, but because your energy will call it out of them. You become the lens. Your mindset either unlocks their greatness or reinforces their mediocrity. So train yourself to see what others ignore. Speak to the highest in people, even when they're showing you the lowest. Treat them not as who they are, but who they could become. Because the rarest and most powerful leaders are those who plant identity in others long before the evidence exists. Think of Thomas Edison. When his teachers told him he was too slow, too stupid to learn anything, his mother didn't argue or rage. She simply said, "You are a genius. They don't understand you." That belief birthed a mind that gave light to the world. That is influence without offense. That is leadership without resentment. That is transformation without force. Your words can be fire or they can be fuel. Use them wisely, but belief alone is not enough. You must sharpen clarity. You must learn the fine art of intent before impact, because influence is not about what you say. It's about what they hear. And if your words cause walls to go up, you've lost before you've begun. To change people, you must disarm them. To disarm them, you must drop your weapons first. Your judgment, you need to win. Your compulsion to correct. You must be less of a critic and more of a mirror. Reflect, don't react. Guide, don't grind. Lead, don't lecture. You must know the human mind is wired to protect identity. When people feel attacked, they don't hear you. They defend, they justify, they shut down. But when they feel valued, they open, they reflect, they shift. And that shift, it's not forced, it's chosen. That is real power. Dale Carnegie once wrote, "A person's name is to that person the sweetest sound in any language." Why? Because people don't crave correction. They crave connection. They crave acknowledgement. They crave relevance. And when you give them that, you earn the right to speak to their soul. And here lies the secret most never learn. Correction without connection breeds resistance. But connection opens the gates for change. So stop trying to be right. Start aiming to be effective. Stop trying to win arguments and start winning hearts. Stop trying to impress and start trying to inspire. This doesn't mean sugarcoating truth. Number truth matters. Honesty matters. But truth without tact is cruelty dressed as virtue. Honesty without empathy is brutality disguised as leadership. So how do you deliver truth that transforms, not truth that triggers? You speak like a sculptor chiseling marble, not with the hammers of criticism, but with the subtle art of suggestion, story, and sincere curiosity. But you ask questions that guide them to discover the truth themselves, because people rarely argue with their own conclusions. Ask, don't accuse. Invite, don't impose. Do you see the power of this? You are not just a person in a conversation. You are a catalyst. You are a mirror. You are a guide. Every word you speak either builds bridges or burns them. Every choice you make either opens doors or slams them shut. And in every room you enter, you leave an invisible trace, an emotional fingerprint. Make it one of grace. Make it one of vision. Make it one of presence so magnetic, people feel better about themselves just because you walked in. This isn't soft. This is strength refined. This is leadership forged in wisdom. Look at Carnegie himself, not the author, but Andrew Carnegie, the steel titan who didn't just build an empire, he built people. He didn't command them. He believed in them. He gave them responsibility before they earned it. He saw leaders before they saw themselves. He created men like Charles Schwab, not by force, but by fire lit from within. And it worked, because he understood the greatest leaders don't create followers. They create other leaders. But to do that, you must first conquer your own self, because leadership is not something you do to others. It's something that you become so fully they feel it just by being near you. You don't motivate others by shouting inspiration. You motivate by being the example. You don't change people by arguing their flaws. You change them by embodying their potential. Because when you walk into a room as a lighthouse, unshakable, steady, compassionate, others recalibrate. Not because you told them to, but because you reminded them of who they could be. That is your calling. And so, if you truly seek to lead, if you truly wish to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment, you must become something far more powerful than persuasive. You must become undeniable, unshakable, not in arrogance, but in alignment, not in dominance, but in depth. Because people don't follow the loudest voice, they follow the clearest one, they follow conviction, not noise. They follow those who walk with such internal certainty that it silences their own chaos. And that certainty, true certainty, comes not from shouting others down, but from rising up inside yourself. It comes from mastering the storm within so fully that your presence becomes a calm in every room you enter. And this is where your leadership is tested, not when things go your way, but when they don't. Not when people praise you, but when they push back. Not when you're celebrated, but when you are ignored, criticized, or misunderstood. And you respond not with force, but with grace. In that moment, you lead. When someone speaks in anger and you meet it with understanding, you lead. When someone fails you and you see their pain before their mistake, you lead. When you hold back the impulse to correct someone just to feel superior, and instead choose the path that lifts, guides, and builds, you lead. This is what separates influence from authority. Authority can be given. Influence must be earned. And the way you earn it is by being someone who makes others feel safe in their growth. You create a space where learning is not laced with shame, where mistakes are met with wisdom, not wrath, where truth is never watered down, but always served with dignity. And here's the paradox. When you make someone feel respected, they listen more. When they feel understood, they open up. When they feel safe, they evolve. So if your goal is to change people, to truly shape them, awaken them, guide them, then you must build that sacred container. Not a container of fear, but of faith. Faith that people are more than their worst moment. Faith that every soul is growing in unseen ways. Faith that influence, when rooted in respect, leaves a legacy that commands no resentment and breeds no regret. And in that space, watch what happens. Watch the walls fall. Watch the ego soften. Watch the stubborn turn curious. And watch the very people who once resisted you begin to walk beside you. Not because you forced them, but because you freed them. That's what real leaders do. They free people. They free people from small thinking, from toxic patterns, from shame that kept them frozen. They liberate minds. They illuminate possibilities. They breathe belief into places where it had long suffocated. But understand, this requires a different kind of strength. Not the strength of clenched fists or raised voices, but the strength of stillness, the strength to pause when provoked, to respond instead of react, to teach through presence, not pressure, to embody so deeply the change you want to see that people feel it before you ever open your mouth. That kind of leadership is rare, but it is yours to claim, and when you do, you will start to see something extraordinary happen. You will see others step into their power, not because you dragged them there, but because you lit the path. You will see arguments dissolve into alignment. You will see resistance replaced with reflection. You will see people rise, not just in how they work, but in how they live. And all because you chose to lead from the inside out. Because you understood what Carnegie taught, what Hill revealed, what every true master knew, that influence is not about making others bend to your will. It's about helping them remember their own. Not by force, not by guilt, not by fear, but by one simple, powerful truth. People grow best where they are seen clearly and treated kindly. Do both, and you'll change lives. Do both, and you'll lead without offense. Do both, and resentment will have no place in your wake, only respect. And so we arrive here, at the heart of it all, at the quiet engine that drives every transformation, every movement, every revolution of the soul. Leadership, not as a skill, but as a spiritual posture. Not as strategy, but as sacred service. Because the world doesn't need more critics. It doesn't need more tyrants in tailored suits. It doesn't need more noise, more pressure, more perfection demanded from imperfect hearts. It needs you, fully awake, fully anchored, fully committed to leading with a kind of power that cannot be stolen, because it was never about control to begin with. This is the power that built empires from steel and sweat, that turned bankrupt farmers into billionaires, that raised orphans into icons, that took men like Lincoln, battered by failure, and carved from them a resilience that stitched an entire nation back together. It's the power of vision, not just for yourself, but for others. It's looking into a person drowning in excuses and seeing the giant buried beneath their fear. It's choosing to lift instead of crush, to shape instead of shame, to believe when no one else will. And this power, it starts with discipline, the discipline to master your own thoughts before you try to shape someone else's, the discipline to hold your tongue when ego wants to speak, the discipline to sit in silence long enough to hear what another soul is really trying to say, beneath their defensiveness, beneath their failure, beneath their pain. That's not weakness. That is mastery. Because anyone can yell, anyone can tear down, anyone can dominate a room through volume, but only a leader builds without breaking. Only a leader can hold space where people feel safe enough to outgrow who they were yesterday. Only a leader can take correction, wrap it in compassion, and deliver it in a way that makes someone say, "Thank you, you helped me become more." That is what you are here to do, to help people become more, to show by your example that power and kindness are not opposites, that strength and softness can and must coexist, that influence without resentment is not a fantasy, but a responsibility. Because here is the truth most miss. People do not remember your advice. They remember how your presence made them feel. They don't remember the lecture. They remember the look in your eyes when they were lost and you didn't judge them. They don't remember your correction. They remember that you gave it with patience and precision, not punishment, and over time those moments, they multiply, they ripple, they take root, and they grow into trust, into loyalty, into impact that cannot be undone. So if you want to leave a mark, not on just what people do, but on who they become, then remember this: lead with love, not with leverage. Speak to dreams, not to fears. And never use truth as a weapon. Use it as a light, because the greatest leaders don't stand above others. They stand beside them. They walk with them. They breathe belief into dry bones. They ignite fires that outlive them. And when their names fade from history books, the souls they touched still carry the echo of their influence. You can be that kind of leader. You don't need a title. You don't need an audience. You don't need anyone's permission. You need only one thing: a decision. A decision to lead in the quiet moments, to choose presence over power, to ask, how can I lift this person? Not, how can I win this conversation? To ask, how can I shape this moment with wisdom? Not, how can I make them change? Because real leadership is never about changing people. It's about inviting them to change. It's not about forcing progress. It's about making progress feel safe, feel possible, feel personal. And that invitation, it begins with you. The world is starving for leadership that heals instead of harms, that connects instead of divides, that builds without breaking. And now, more than ever, it's waiting for you to rise. So rise. Rise with gentleness in your voice and fire in your spirit. Rise with conviction in your values and softness in your tone. Rise with the courage to listen, the strength to speak, and the wisdom to know which one is needed. Rise and lead, not just with your words, but with your walk, because the world doesn't need more noise. It needs more light. Be that light. Be that leader. And when you do, you won't just change minds. You'll change lives. Without offense, without resentment, with nothing but clarity, character, and an unwavering commitment to leave every soul better than you found it. That is leadership. Now go and lead.